This is the Troutbitten podcast.
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten?
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten?
Yeah, Troutbitten.
Troutbitten.
It's about trout.
Wild trout. This is Troutbitten.
This is the Troutbitten podcast, and thanks for tuning in. My name is Dominic Swantowski. I'm the owner of Troutbitten and the author of Troutbitten.com. Night fishing requires sacrifice. High catch rates are exchanged for a few fish that are large enough to fill out the net. A hopeful bargain. Visual excitement is traded for the adrenaline rush, sustained by roaming among the unseen. And sleeping hours are swapped for calm, reclusive minutes apart from the otherwise resting world. River hours pass unusually in the darkness. Time moves as if accelerated, and by early morning an angler might wonder if he dreamed some part of the adventure. In the end, all sacrifices are reckoned, and every night fisher estimates their worth with heavy eyes behind the headlights, wheels turning, confronting loneliness between the painted lines. Welcome to Episode 2, Season 8 of the Troutbitten Podcast Skills Series, Night Fishing for Trout. I'm here with a few of my best fishing friends, my only night fishing buddies, and tonight we're here to consider light. First, the naturals like Moonlight and Starlight. Then we'll talk about city lights and other artificials like our own flashlights and headlamps. Lastly, we'll discuss the use of glow-in-the-dark stuff like fly lines, indicators, and more. There's a lot to tackle here, so let's get right into it. This is a skills series after all. I'll start by introducing my friends with a quick question. Guys, what are your favorite weather conditions and river conditions for night fishing? Austin Dando, what do you think?
Yeah. So I like sort of a below average flow for the summertime. Ideally, some low light conditions. I find that hot days, like hot consecutive days followed by cool nights, produce as well. And I also like moving water. So knee-deep runs and transition seams off those runs.
Nice. Josh Darling, what do you have, bud? What do you like best?
Oh, I like it dark. No.
Good start.
Nighttime. No, I like a low crescent moon, clear skies, plenty of starlight, but the moon not above the trees that I'm fishing.
Okay. What about the river?
I like the river. Let's say 2 weeks since the last rain in the summer.
Nice, I hear that. Yeah. Weather. Well, you said kind of clearish.
Humid. Yeah, I'm going to say a clear night.
Mm-hmm.
And what Austin said makes sense to me, but I have a lot of good memories of humid nights.
Do you?
I do.
I like the crisp nights, which let's say they're less humid.
I like those better, but I have big fish memories on humid nights.
Nice. Hey, Trevor Smith, Dr. Trevor Smith, what do you have, bud? What are your favorite weather and river conditions for night fishing?
I also like humid nights. I like still humid nights. I like certainly, 2 weeks is great, at least a week since it rained last so that clarity can be at its best. I also dislike bright moonlight. I don't care if it's faint moonlight, but bright moonlight I don't love. I'm okay with the temperature dropping into the night. I think that some of my better nights have come with temperature drops, but I still like that humidity. The problem is at some point there you get an intersection between a lot of fog and the humidity if the temperatures are dropping enough. And I don't love the fog for my own visibility. I don't know. Bashline seemed to think it was pretty harmful to good fishing. He had a theory about it diminishing the fish's ability to see up. I don't know that I buy that 100%, but maybe it's just in my head that I feel like our foggy nights have not been particularly great nights.
Well, has anybody here had good success in the fog?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we've had some really good nights in the fog.
Boy, I haven't.
And I'm not going to say that our best nights were in the fog, but
I'm glad you remember better than me.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I remember some particular fish,
nights.
like
number-wise.
For instance, and you're going to remember this one, like the rockwall fish.
Oh yeah,
was a really foggy night. Yeah.
Was it
Interesting.
dense fog for a long period of time, or was it just kind of passing and then lifting?
It rolled through, but I noticed that fish were coming during the fog.
It didn't care.
That was that was definitely a good night.
But we've had nights where we're driving home and like trying to come up with excuses for why it was a tough night. And you're like, well, it was foggy. And you know what Bashford says.
Write it off.
Not our fault.
This is like
fog's fault.
Yeah, totally. This happens in hunting too. There's a lot of weather variables that have debatable effect on hunting.
Debatable. That's right. There's always an excuse.
The biologists.
Yeah, they get me all the time.
Oh my gosh. The moon is probably the most controversial. That the biologists
hold on about the light.
Differ from hunters.
Yeah. What about, so we're all in agreement though with clear water? Would you rather have clearer water than muddy water?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, clear water.
We don't even like muddy water in a day, but
yeah.
I will say I've had a couple memorable nights with dirty water. I went out just because I had the night off, and I went out and I was surprised every time. I'm going to say there are half dozen times I can kind of remember that I had good success in dirty, and it just makes me wonder, like, how do they see it? They don't see it, I guess.
On top or subsurface?
You probably did better subsurface,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Much more subsurface. I don't specifically remember so many of those nights, but yes, subsurface. And that makes sense.
Interesting.
That makes sense. Taking it down to them.
It does.
And it creates that disturbance in the way. And I used bigger flies and all that. And we'll get into all those kinds of tactics here in future podcasts. That crisp night versus humid night is interesting to me. What about cold? In the last podcast, we said we'll do it year round. But weather conditions do. I think it sounds like you're all saying that you'd prefer a summer night.
Yeah. I'll even bleed a little into spring, a little bit into fall, as long as it's still warm. But when the days are cold and the water temps are low, it seems like the feeding spreads out so much throughout the day and through that 24-hour cycle that it doesn't necessarily turn on enough of a window at night to be as noticeable. But
good call.
I also think we need to put more hours in pushing those seasons. But
I think one of the things that I like about the summer is just the fish get a little bit more predictable with the low water. It feels feels like there's a little bit more variability in where you might find them in other times of the year. And in the summer, you can kind of pinpoint this is probably where they're going to be.
That's nice too. Location. I think there's a really good reason why summertime is thought of as night fishing season. It is usually more successful. And you talked about it in the last podcast there, Trevor.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's the warmer temps in the day. Why wouldn't you feed at night under cover of darkness and in the coolest temps of the day?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, then let's get into it. So ironically, light is what defines night fishing. In the absence of natural light, it's the moon and stars that provide the angler with sight. Of course, city lights, headlamps, flashlights, and glow-in-the-dark stuff are all factors in the night fishing experience. So in many natural and artificial forms, light draws the lines around night fishing. Trout respond to changing light conditions in the daytime, and every good fisherman recognizes this. We look for shadows on sunny days. We fish at dusk and we fish at dawn. Most anglers are eager to search for trout on cloudy days too. But when the daylight fades and the darkness takes over, trout habits shift dramatically. And that is where this mystery begins. The night angler surely relies on other senses to help feel the fly line or hear a surface take. But without sight, without some light, we are blinded by darkness. Light, therefore, is the principal element of night fishing. But nothing on our rivers exists in pure darkness, no matter how black the night. And this is the most surprising thing that a new night fisherman learns, that it's really not all that dark out there. So let's consider natural and artificial light. Let's talk about how these light sources affect the trout and the angler and the fishing. Austin, you want to talk about natural and artificial light?
Sure. So when you think about natural light, that's things like moonlight, starlight, any atmospheric light that would naturally exist. Anything that'd be artificial be lights from a town, lights from cars, lights from a bridge, anything that would produce light outside of the natural universe that would.
Sure. So we talked about that on the last podcast and like what good night fishing locations are like. And we're all trying to get away from the artificial light.
Yeah.
And if anybody out there, listen, if what you have, your location, if what you can get to and fish a lot and really dig into the night game is near a city and you do have those influences of artificial light, like who cares? Go fish it. But in general, we look for natural dark places for kind of a natural night fishing experience. Like you can fish in town, but the experience and the fishing itself can be pretty different, right?
Definitely. And I think the experience being so much a part of fishing at night, I think it's really tough to want to pursue, night fishing options where there is a lot of artificial light, because it really does deplete your ability to engage in and feel like you can really see the areas that you are trying to fish to. And there are exceptions to that for sure, and spots that may be worth fishing despite some artificial light. But I also think that the fish that are trying to, or that are planning to take advantage of the cover of darkness, are also going to be somewhat inhibited by bright artificial light, which is going to be shining into the water, whether it's even just inhibiting their vision as they look up or in giving them a sense of vulnerability.
I hear that. I agree with that.
So even, let's say we're fishing one of our local streams, or maybe not even local, and there's a local town nearby, and we can see those lights on the horizon. That's artificial light, and whether we like it or not, it may reach the trout stream we're fishing, but it also may reach our own eyes, and we'll get into that too. But whether it's in the trout's eyes or our eyes, we can't always get away from artificial light. Now, cloud cover comes into that equation too. Town lights can reflect that into the clouds some. Fishing in direct city light is just a really different experience.
It is. That cloud cover is a good point because, well, you guys know one of our popular streams around here, there are, I don't know if there's any place where you can really get away on a cloudy night, where you can really get away from that influence of one of the couple towns that are nearby. Even if you're a couple miles, downstream, where I'm not in town, but on those cloudy nights, I was surprised by this when I started night fishing a lot. Those cloudy nights, you're like, wow, that those lights of town go up into the clouds and they just illuminate basically everything in sight. It's not like it's, a light bulb, but it changes things. It's not that pure, let's say, natural dark place with natural night fishing.
You can treat it the same way as a bright sunny day. As you get closer to those cities, like the trout are still going to be there because the trout hold there during the day, and they're not going to move way down into the dark sections at night, miles away from the city light. And so if that's where you're at, and if that's what you're trying to fish, then find the darkest place, like find the places that are blocked most from the city light, and you're still going to find fish that act the same as those fish that are over in the dark.
That's a good point. Find the shade, you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Right on. So we all prefer this natural light, and which kind of gives us a more natural experience. Even during the daytime, I know you guys are always looking for like wild trout, wild experiences. So let's talk about moonlight and starlight. Man, you start talking about night fishing, everybody talks about the moon. Oh, you out there in the full moon? Yeah, not my favorite. What do you guys think? Darker nights better than bright nights? Is that your preference?
For sure.
Is that fair?
I've experienced nights that are so dark though that it really becomes pretty difficult to even pick out shadows at times.
Yeah.
Like if you've got like a new moon and it's just, I don't know what causes it. Maybe it's time of year, but the stars feel more distant. Maybe
it's cloudy or something.
Yeah, if you're cloudy and not close to a city, that gets really dark. And then all of a sudden those shadows that you're looking for accuracy at getting close to the bank, which is what we rely on so much. We rely on the shadows against the bank to know how close we are to getting on the bank. And if you can't see that as well, that becomes really, really difficult.
That's a good point. There are some really dark nights I've experienced. Like Austin said, it's always when the moon is not out, you're not near a town, and it's cloudy. My gauge is always, when I hold my hand up, can I see any of my fingers? Most nights you can. You can see all. Dark. Yeah, most nights you can see your fingers. Most nights I can see my wedding ring, or at least part of it, right? I certainly can't see the lines on my hands, right? I can't see the joints of my fingers as I flex them. But most nights I can see that hand really well. But I've had nights, you guys know, you've been in a couple of those, I'm sure, where, man, it's dark. Wow. And that is extremely disorienting. And I've never had a good night. And it's my own fault. I think it's my own.
That's what I was going to say too.
Well, do you?
I don't think
because I think the fishing is good those nights.
I bet it would be, but maybe the fish are disoriented too. Do you think that's possible? You think the fish expect or want that little bit of light that we also want?
It's certainly not going to hurt the silhouette. I mean,
right.
That's why I said early on, like a low crescent moon or something that's giving some atmospheric light, but really dim. You want something that's going to be silhouette, because even when we are going low, we still assume that most likely the trout are seeing our fly from below the fly, even when we're fishing down into the mid-seam,
Column, yeah.
Mid-column, thank you. Even when we're going down mid-column, we expect that the trout are probably looking up towards our fly. And so you want some amount of atmospheric light, be it dim.
For that silhouette, like you said.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's kind of one of our guiding principles. I know all four of us believe that trout are looking up and that they want to see the fly above them. It's very rare anymore that I don't know, throw a really, like a heavy sculpin that's actually trying to bump the bottom over and over and over and over. Perfecting performance on the water with specialty products designed specifically for every application and species has been the mission of Sage since its founding in 1980. Proudly made in America, all Sage rods are handcrafted to perfection on a small island in the Pacific Northwest. Today, Sage continues to use the most innovative, world-class materials in their rods and reels, collaborating with experts and relentlessly testing products so they are refined for specialized use. Whether targeting tarpon in the Florida Keys, brook trout in Pennsylvania spring creeks, bass in the Midwest, or casting dry flies in Montana, Sage has the right tool for the job. Precision Fly and Tackle is a family-owned business with a passion for the outdoors and a sense of adventure. They are anglers who enjoy every moment spent on the water with family and friends. Precision Fly and Tackle carries the widest selection of Euro rods, reels, lines, leaders, flies, and accessories. From the beginner to the advanced angler, Precision Fly and Tackle can outfit every angler, no matter the budget. Visit them online at precisionflyandtackle.com. Then use code Troutbitten10, that's the number 10, for 10% off your order. Gear up with Precision Fly and Tackle for your next adventure. Trevor, you got something, I could tell.
Well, I just think it's interesting. Like, I would like to know, and I haven't been able to find, and I think it probably exists out there because the fisheries folks throughout the U.S. are pretty amazing, but I would really like to know, I would like to experience the quantifiable amount of light that trout can still see.
Right on.
Because they have rods and cones similar to humans. It's a little bit of a different eye structure, and their eye is more like a half globe, and it just draws in a lot of light because of that, because they're not dealing with our kind of shaded, hooded eye. But I would love to know how little light they can still perceive with. And then how does that interact with their lateral line and their ability to sense vibration? Because, we operate on this assumption that it's all surface-based because of the silhouetting. And yet you also think like the most vibration and kind of like disruption right? Yeah, disruption is occurring when you're fishing on the surface. And so what if we're perceiving something as the silhouetting and the fish are really painting this vibratory picture, this like acoustic picture, right? Just like an ultrasound.
Just
right?
like
that just like an ultrasound, but that is able to paint this picture of what's on the surface based on the vibration far more than it is the light that we're thinking about.
I love that. Love it.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true.
Love to know the answer to that.
It's going to be interesting to get into like fly color with you guys. I'm excited to talk about that.
Wine red.
Well, I was going to say, I believe in red as part of my fly.
I do too.
And I'm just,
We'll get to all that. But hey, Josh, you talked about the moon, how you'd like a little crescent moon sometimes, right? And I'm with you on that. Like, it doesn't have to be totally new moon, no moon. I don't like a full moon. I don't want it super bright. But even a bright moon, even a full moon, like, it travels fast. We all think of that big light in the sky. Oh, it's like the sun. No, the moon travels fast compared to the sun. So be aware of its course, right? And know the moon rise times and set times, and know what angle they're going to be at. And then I try to keep, if I'm going to fit, and I'll fish when the moon's out. I care, but it's not going to stop me from fishing. but I will know what angle the moon is going to be at what time I'm going out there, and then I like to know what direction it's going to go. Basically, what it's going to set in the west or the east or whatever, and I will try to keep that moon angle behind the trout, if that makes sense to everybody. Of course, the fish are faced into the current, and I'm going to try to keep the moon angle behind the trout. We've talked about this a little bit before, and we've definitely talked about it with what we like to do with the sun. Same thing with the moon, right?
And you can follow the same principles with shade as you do with the sun as well.
Nice.
If you are dealing with adverse moon conditions where it is up ahead of them, it's like you should still fish. Like if you've got the opportunity to night fish, you should still fish if you know if the moon's going to be in front of them. Sometimes you can pick portions of the river that you're not going to deal with that, but you're still always going to have shade. Shade's the same with moonlight as it is with sunlight. You just have to look for it.
Especially in the summer with the leaves on the trees. There are big shade lines and
great
and
points.
spots.
So some of my favorite nights, and I have a vivid memory with you, Dom, I don't know, 6 years ago, are dark nights, like we were saying, without any moon, but just kind of pure starlight, where you can look up and it's bright and it's clear and it's nice, and you can see the reflection of the stars in the river.
Oh,
and,
wow.
The nights are dark, but they're not completely black.
Yeah, you can see your hand.
Yeah, there you go. You can see you can see your wedding band on your hand,
probably.
as Tom said.
Yeah.
But these trout seem to be very eager in these conditions. Like we're saying, we're not blinding them with moonlight, and we're also not going total blackout conditions. It's sort of like a happy medium somewhere that both we and the trout agree on.
Yeah, that's what I think too. That's why I asked, like, when it's really dark and we're struggling to see, maybe the trout do as well. But as Trevor brought up, they got the lateral line, something we don't have.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on there. We don't have answers. Just don't have them. We'll never live long enough and to be able to fish long enough to get them. But it's neat to think about it.
It is neat to think about it now. The next time we fish on a super dark night, we're going to keep it in mind,
Well, I'm going to fish more in the fog. I'm going to have more confidence in the fog. Knowing
you should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And humidity. I'm going to be looking for humidity now. Big fish coming to the humidity.
It's easy to find this here.
That's right.
It's all confidence.
It's all confidence.
Josh catches all the big ones all night long. Any conditions. He's the expert.
He's the authority.
He's the authority. That's right. That's what we said last podcast. It's like, well, maybe you guys don't think you're the authority. That's good stuff. I want to say one more thing here about natural light, though, before we move on. Like, trout get used to things. Over a long period of time, trout may adapt to night feeding near a street light, for example, in town. They may not sit in the shallows and feed there, but maybe they do, because that light's there every night. And the predators, like the overhead, the birds, aren't as active. Maybe trout finally do get comfortable underneath that street light if it's not too bright. And likewise, on a narrower time scale, trout adjust to the darkness every night, just as they adjust to the rising sun over an hour or so every morning. Like, these transition times are often a period of high activity. I catch a lot of trout within the first hour of real darkness. And just the same, I catch a lot of trout in the first hour of real daylight when I'm out there at dawn. It seems that trout are, grateful for these transitions. And they're used to them. They're ready for them. They expect them. But when the bright moon rises over a hill, lighting up a river after a quiet and starry night, it was dark. It seems as though like a reset button is pushed. Most times trout turn off for me, and it takes another hour or so before trout might feed again. Maybe less, if I'm lucky. So too, if you are careless with a flashlight and suddenly illuminate the river for much time at all, trout will usually just stop feeding. You have thoughts on that, guys?
I have a couple of thoughts off the bat. I mean, and so I'll say a purely biological potential, which is just that the way that color vision and our rods are what are responsible for night vision in our body. Cones are the things that do more of the color vision. I'm going to make this relatively simple, but the longer that we're exposed to light, we basically for all you idiots, we deplete a substance called retinol in our cones, and we basically diminish. The longer we're exposed to bright light, the more we diminish our ability to see in less light. So it's a way that our eyes basically do the same thing that you would do with a camera by changing your aperture. Our bodies have a way of basically reducing the brightness by depleting the substance. And that substance is processed through the liver, and the approximate amount of time that it takes for that substance to regenerate is 45 minutes to an hour in most mammals, and they theorize in most fish. So this arbitrary seeming period of time of about an hour that it takes that trout shut off is maybe not so arbitrary, in the sense that as the light increases, they may truly have less ability to see, or an imperative ability to see. Or if you shine light in their eyes for long enough, you are actively depleting this substance that is allowing them to maintain sensitive night vision. And very few trout, I think, if you take away one of their senses, are going to feel as reckless or as aggressive potentially to feed. So there could be a reason that happens as light changes. Not, we're not talking about daylight. We're just talking about changes at night that could cause them to deplete some of that night sensitivity.
Do you think that's more biological, or do you think it is more like general spooking? Like, are they just put off because of a threat, or they just have something actually change within them more?
Austin, that's just the dumb guy version. Trevor's got the smart guy
question,
version.
right? Because
spooking is
we spook them. Them trouts are spooked.
All right. Emotion versus physical attribute.
The mind,
or we're dealing with the trout's emotions versus their biology.
I'm spooked.
Them trouts are spooked.
I think wild animals.
Question.
I think creatures are really sensitive to things that fall outside of what they perceive as normal and routine. And so if you shine a light quickly, I don't think they have any way of knowing how that's different than lightning.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, so how long
flash.
do you think the light must be shined?
Excuse
me.
Yeah.
Shown? On
I think it's
the water.
Shown.
Yeah.
It's definitely shown.
Yeah.
I was wrong about Rapala, so who knows? Stupid name. I think that
Rapala is a hell of a lure at night, I've been told.
Hell of a lure at night.
Right. We've all
heard that one.
Yep.
So I don't know, Austin. I think the shorter the better, and I think that we could probably go through some testing on it if we watched the fish while we shone the light on them. But I know that shined. I know that. I know Josh and Dom and I have all shown the light in the shallows at nighttime after we're done fishing. Shined.
Just go ahead.
Now you hear it. Yeah.
We were shown the way by our shining lights.
Oh my! Where are we going here?
Right? Come on now. Well, it's just weird. Like when the light is on a fish, they do seem to spook. But Josh and I have also had an instance where we shone the light on a fish.
Oh yeah, tell that story. Tell it.
So it kind of seemed like the fish was sort of apoplectic or like stunned. We shined our headlights on it, and it didn't move, and it sort of seemed stunned in some ways, and just kind of sat there. And we were actually able to net this 20 plus inch fish from behind, and just kind of like enjoy looking at it and let it go. It was pretty wild though, and we were approaching from downstream of it, so we were coming up from behind it. But I don't know. It was very different than other fish we've noticed.
Yeah.
So it could have been a one-off.
We were walking out of the river, and we were shining our lights directly on it. And so I can't imagine how bright the water was around it. And he just didn't really know what to do. He kind of just sat there and kind of squirmed around a little bit. And we did the same thing that anybody would do. We're like, hey, I'm going to put my net in front of it. And like Trevor touched its tail, and it swam right into my net and scooped it up. And
it was pretty fun.
Yeah.
I find it interesting. You think the trout see pretty similarly to the way we do, huh?
Basic structure. In terms of there being rods and cones and similar substances available within the eye. But I think the relative sensitivity and how much better they are at gathering light, and what they see a much broader range, front and back. Their circumference of vision is much greater than ours is because of how their eyes are positioned.
But the eye design
there's a lot more similarity than difference.
Huh. That's cool. Love that. That's why we have the expert here, Austin.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
And this kind of ties into our discussion on headlamps in many ways, right? Because
it does.
We utilize the different colors at nighttime to help preserve our night vision, and different light colors exist on different wavelengths, and those wavelengths deplete our night vision and that retinol at different rates, and red light being the most sparing of our night vision, whereas blue and green lights can also be used, which are more depleting of our night vision, but also can create more visibility. So as you move back towards white light, you kind of increase the depletion of the substances that allow us to have accurate night perception and visualization. So most of us choose a red light at night for that reason, because both it seems to deplete and spook wild animals less in some ways because it's less bright, but also it depletes our own night vision much less. And so if you're going to spend a few minutes tying on a different fly or rigging, or it's really frustrating to use bright white light and really torch your night vision for a period of time. And because it does take so long for night vision to be completely restored, it really takes about, like I said before, almost 45 minutes of pure darkness to fully accommodate. And it doesn't mean that it takes 45 minutes for you to see again once you shine a little bright light, but to get back to where you were, it does, you know. So it's more, I think we're more sensitive to it than we even maybe always acknowledge. And there's certainly some good rationale to be careful with the use of white light at night.
Yeah.
So Dom, you've written a good amount about headlamps and reasons why you choose certain ones over the others. And you've touched on the fact that it's important to have a headlamp cycle to red first because of those reasons. You don't want to be standing in the stream or standing on the riverbank and get hit with white light versus red. Would you talk a little bit about your headlamp selection, what you like to use?
It's just because of what Trevor said. Like, I don't want white light basically all night. From the time I start fishing until the time I'm done, I'm not turning on my white light unless I catch the fish of the year, or let's say the fish of the month, right? Unless I get a really big fish, I'm not turning that white light on. That isn't completely true. We're going to talk about the bank flash here in a second, but that's a little different. I'm not turning that white light on for any more than maybe 1 second if I do that bank flash. However, I like the red, and I want a lamp, like you're saying, Austin, that starts on red. Not very many lamps do that. So anyway, I use a Princeton Fred. It's called FRED. It's the Princeton Fred. It's like a tactical, I think, originally a military light. It's also not really bright. Many night anglers right away, they're like, all right, I'm going to get the most lumens that I possibly can. I don't want that. I don't want a super bright light, because even a bright red light will, it seems anyway, it hurts my night vision.
Sure. Yeah.
Once I have that night vision, and like Trevor's saying, for me, it seems to take, I'm going to say 25 minutes to a half hour before I go, I can see now. You know what we're saying. Once I have that, I don't want to mess it up. And white light really hurts it. I like that Princeton Fred. There are plenty of, well, I don't know about plenty. There are a few other lights that'll kind of give you that feature where you can get right to red and not have to cycle through white.
Yeah.
One of the cool things now that, and you do have to spend a little bit more, the Princeton Fred or whatever it's called is, it's a great budget option, like, cause it's not that expensive to get, and it does the job really well. If you do, want a little bit more control over everything, most of the higher end black diamond lights now, which is, so I use, it's whatever their waterproof black diamond light is, and it has settings on it, and it has like a memory built into it, so you can save your settings in the headlamp. And so like, and it's not like you go into settings and you choose it's you hold down the button, and if it's set on red, then as soon as you press it, it's going to start on red. And if it's set on white, then as soon as you press it, it's going to set on white. Yeah. But then you can dim it, and then as you release, it saves that. And then if you turn it back on, it's going to remember what you had it set at last. And so, and you could have two settings. And so, like with mine, if my red setting is like set to the dimmest it can get, and it's almost like moonlight dim, like it's just enough for me to see my hands and tie a knot, you know. And then the flash is, I have it pretty bright because I want to spend very little. I want to see everything I can pretty quickly and then have it off.
Interesting.
And so if I hold it down, then it turns on the bright light and I turn it right back off.
Oh, that's neat. I like that.
The advantage to that for us has been that we don't carry a separate flashlight other than our UV light for charging line. So it has seemed to allow minimization of what equipment we're bringing.
And I've seen yours too. They're both, I mean, they're small, seem comfortable, right?
Yeah.
You said they're waterproof. That's a nice feature. I don't usually fall in with my head
It's
underneath.
also nice because mine's rechargeable. Like I don't need to, need to replace batteries.
I like that part. You could charge it up on the way to the river and you're not going to
Yeah.
run out of AAAs in the
For
3
sure.
a.m. hour or something.
Yep.
So I use my headlamp mostly for rigging, and even when I do that with this red lamp that we're talking about, not white and usually dim red, I turn my back to the water. You guys do that? Like,
Yeah,
I just
do the
don't
same
want
thing.
any light on the water
For
if I
sure.
can help it. Like, why
Yep.
not eliminate that question in the back of your
Right.
mind? Like, is this her?
Yeah.
Just turn away. And I want the dim red lamp, like we're talking about, to preserve that night vision. Like Dr. Smith has already explained. Like,
Sure.
it takes a while to get that back once it's gone, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And you mentioned the green light and blue light can kind of do this, the same thing. But
It's the same thing. It just exists on the spectrum further to the left in terms of wavelength. And so it's going to deplete your night vision more quickly because it more actively depletes the retinol. But for that same reason, it's a brighter light and you can see more with it potentially. It's just you do it at a cost, and you also potentially cost spooking fish when you do that as well, depending on which direction you're using it. But I mean, there could exist a case for doing your bank flash with a blue or green
Right
or
on.
something
Yeah.
like that, and
Interesting.
playing around with that and seeing whether that was less disturbing than a bright white flash.
Trevor, what if I take retinol vitamins? Would that help?
Eat
Well,
a bunch of carrots.
There's two things retinol. There's like a retinol with an OL and an AL.
Little pouch of carrots on
The
your
AL is
vest.
the substance in the eye. Yeah, retinol or retin A. That's like a cream you use for acne. So there's a lot of things named similar things.
This
but-
guy just wants to give us all the information.
That's
Yeah,
going
I
to be
love
in
it.
the night. We're going to do like a nighttime in the vest video, and it's going to be like a pouch of carrots. Like one of the vests is dedicated to mini carrots.
Like when you get a cramp, they make you eat bananas. If I lose my night vision, I'm eating carrots.
Why are we
Yeah.
not?
Well, I flashed the bank. That's 2 carrots.
Must recharge. I do like
baby carrots. Baby carrots. Don't exaggerate. Just little.
Yeah, it's
Baby
carrots.
carrots.
They have vitamin A, and that helps rhodopsin production, which is another thing. There's so many names in the eye and a lot of little substances, and I don't want anyone to get caught up with it. I think the main things people need to know is that it can be depleted. It takes about half an hour to an hour to fully develop your night vision, and then it can be depleted pretty quickly by bright light, especially white light.
I hear you. Like gaining that night vision is what I think makes us comfortable out there. And I'll say, like some anglers, I think they never give themselves that chance to get comfortable
Totally.
because they use the lamps too much.
Yep. Yep.
Whether it's the headlamp or the flashlight. Talk about that. Like personally, I have three lamps on me. Let's say the headlamp, flashlight, which I'm calling a lamp, and then my cell phone. In almost like an emergency, I could use that if I needed. So I got 3 lights on me. And well, the flashlight to me, you guys said you'll use your headlamp for navigation because you have a different one than me. For years, I guess for all the years, I've always carried a handheld flashlight. It's small. It stays in my pocket most times. It's far more powerful than my headlamp. This is where I really do want the lumens. And I mostly use it for navigation and safety, I suppose. And sometimes I use it to kind of scan the water. Like we've talked about a few times. Often that water is the shallows. I like to see if bigger fish are in the shallows where we hope they are. And I also use this to charge up my glow-in-the-dark stuff, which we'll talk about in a little bit. That's what I use my flashlight for. You guys carry a flashlight too, or just the headlamp?
I've been using the green light on my headlamp for navigation, either like relocating or in and out of the stream. And then I do have a handheld flashlight on a zinger that can go really intense in brightness or dim down to a really low brightness. And I'll use that to charge my fly line. That's what I carry.
Right on.
We don't carry a flashlight.
No
Yeah.
flashlight.
No.
Too tough for a flashlight. I like the flashlight because I can, hold it at different angles than I can my head, right? Like I actually hold you guys have seen me do this. I'll hold my arm way up and kind of spot down into those shallows.
Yeah, that is cool. That is a nice option.
Whether it's after a fishing trip or at a backyard fire, you can bet the Troutbitten crew has a case of New Trail Broken Heels along with us. It's honestly our favorite beer. This hazy IPA is smooth and full-bodied. Hand-selected Citra hops lead to notes of bright clementine and juicy ruby red grapefruit. Broken Heels is a keeper. New Trail beer is proudly brewed in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and delivered cold to your favorite craft beer retailer every week. At New Trail, it's not about being the best angler. It's about getting out there. So enjoy nature's moments and reward yourself for a day well fished with New Trail Broken Heels. It's Troutbitten's favorite beer. For over a decade, Smith Creek has designed innovative, high-quality fly fishing accessories made to put your gear in easy reach, free up your hands, and keep our waters clean. Check out the all-new tippet holder. Each unit is individually machined from billet aluminum and anodized in 2 eye-catching colors. They hold up to 5 tippet spools with a spring-loaded plunger that is quick and easy to use. The brand new Rod Clip Plus comes with a stiff 304 steel pin and integrated carabiner clip, giving you 2 ways to attach it to your vest or pack. All Smith Creek products are built guide tough and backed by solid customer service. To learn more about Smith Creek products, visit their website at smithcreek.co. So I've occasionally mentioned that we use the flashlight to spot trout once in a while. And without clarification, I guess, people mistake this for something else. We don't spot trout and then fish for them. Instead, we'll spot the shallows a bit while relocating or when walking in, just to see what is in the shallows on that night. What happens when we do put that light on a good fish, guys?
Yeah, they're gone.
Right?
They're gone and they're not coming back.
For us, right?
Yeah.
Or else they lock up for a second, but they're not going to eat.
No, for sure. I think there must be like catfish or something that people are correlating in their mind with spotlighting and then fishing for them, or even with hunting, how people will spotlight animals. But it's definitely not a tactic that you could use for trout.
Well, there are people, I remember arguments about it on, it was Facebook or Instagram, where guys in Michigan that were floating were mad at other guys who would spot trout and then back up and fish for them and put clients on them and all that kind of stuff. And there were big arguments about spotting fish and then fishing for them. And like, personally, I don't do that. I will mark the spot. I might come back another night, and just for sure, remember that spot and say, "Hey, that's a good holding lie."
Yeah, and I don't even know if I have an ethical problem with it. I mean, if you were fishing in the daytime and you spotted a fish by looking down in the water, I mean, what's the difference? I think you're potentially that you're using like technology to help assist, but like guys use fish finders all the time, fishing from lakes, for depth and all sorts of stuff. Is it unethical to use polarized glasses just because it helps you see under the water, So I don't know. I think it's easy to be self-righteous about the line across which just you personally won't cross, but
that's fair.
And I think if the fish willingly eats, it's not like we're talking about finding it and snagging it.
Oh my!
If the fish is willingly eating by its own choice, then I don't know what's so wrong about it. If you play it quick, let it go, and it's all right.
Right. I don't know that it would be as fun. And
I'm not going to tell you it's wrong.
Yeah, right.
Really?
I also don't think I would do it, but
I feel differently about it. I do. I feel like it's a bit unethical. Like you said, Trevor, like what's the difference about daytime versus night?
Yeah.
I do. I feel like, and I've had people even just question the ethics of night fishing in general. Like, hey, just leave the fish alone. It's their time, it's nighttime. Like, hey, you can fish in the day. Just give the fish a rest. Give them a break. Like, why do you have to fish for them at night? And it's unsporting just to fish for them at night because they don't, they can't see you. Like, well, I can't see them either. But, anyway, there's an argument out there. And it's interesting because I kind of follow a little bit differently than you guys do, I suppose. Like, I won't spot a fish and then fish for it. I really won't. I don't know if it's unethical. I'm just like, I'm not going to do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
How often do you spot fish, though? I feel like I rarely get in the occasion where I'm like, oh, there's one up there that I haven't spooked, that I've lit up with a light, that I'm going to cast at, and it's not going to go flying off the moment my fly gets near it.
Honestly, I'm going to say like 100 times. No, really. I
believe you.
While walking in or out or relocating, and I will, if I'm going to relocate a long distance, and I know I'll have whatever, I go ahead and accept it. It's going to take me a while to get that pure night vision back. Yeah, I'll spot those shallows and just spot where I'm going to be walking. And because I feel like I can learn a lot. That's why I do it, because I love learning what trout are doing at night. The truth is, though, too, a lot of our waters, most of our waters, we got this limestone green tint to them all the time, right? There's always a chalkiness to our waters, even on the clearest conditions. I mean, really, you can't see that far through our waters. We don't have gin clear streams. Right. But no, Austin, I've seen a lot of trout, and bigger trout, whatever, mid-teens, high teens, and bigger. Through the years, I go, ooh, that's a big one. They usually bolt. They usually get right out of there.
And that's what I mean. Like, are you walking up really close to them to the point where by the time you spot them, they're already on to you?
Oh, I agree. They're definitely on to me, right? And so I don't even try to fish for them. But I do mark the spot. Like I said, I go, okay.
Yeah.
And then I'll start thinking about other spots that have really similar characteristics. Was that extra close to the bank, but I had a good riffle in it, okay? And so I might start treating those kind of spots as my prime locations that I'm going to target next.
It's pretty wild, though, how when your lights are on like that, you can see that some of those trout are hanging in super nondescript water. Mm-hmm. Like there's nothing there. Mm-hmm. There's not, I mean, and maybe that's what's drawing them there, is that there's no current and it's easy to hunt. I don't know.
Good point.
Josh, what's your take on if it's ethical to fish for a trout you spotted with a light?
Are you referring to coming back for that fish that you spotted, or fishing for it?
Yeah.
Right.
Like you see it and now you're going to fish for it.
Turn a light off and fish for it. Do you do that or no?
I don't think it would work.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know that I would try it.
Yeah.
Do you think it's wrong if you did?
No.
Or right?
I don't think it's wrong. Ethically, I don't know that it makes any difference. I mean, you're probably not going to be successful. Like Trevor and I netted that fish just because
he was blinded,
basically.
Yeah. I think he was blinded by white light. Yeah. Anyway, that's good. So we're all kind of in agreement then. I think, do we all agree that light on the water spooks trout? It doesn't even have to be directly on the trout, but just on the water around it. Does it spook it generally?
Yes.
Yes, when it falls outside of the fish's normal routine. I mean, if that fish is used to cars turning around in a parking lot and it shines their headlights over the water there, they know that's routine.
That happens. Yeah.
It happens. It happens every night. And if they got spooked by that, they'd never eat. And so they don't. They learn and they adapt. And we've even seen other examples of how fish, like trout, respond to pressure with these subtle changes in their behavior and even genetics, like that term of epigenetics, how trout populations will change in a certain area based on pressure. That you absolutely get changes in behavior based on the trout's experience in a particular area. And if it's an area next to a factory, if it's an area next to a highway, whatever it is, they're going to experience more and different light. And as long as it's in their routine, I think they don't get spooked by it. But yes,
dude, that's cool.
Light outside of their routine at night, I do think spooks them.
I think that's why the bank flash doesn't really spook them, is because it imitates a heat lightning, a storm in the distance, anything like that.
Mm-hmm. We've brought this up multiple times now. Guys, what's the bank flash?
It's the sub 1 second flash of light on the bank just to get your bearings and know what your depth is there, how far you need to cast. Is there an overhanging branch? What was the structure? I don't quite remember it. We try to minimize it as much as possible, and I'd say on good nights in familiar water, I do it almost never. But in less familiar water or places where I'm a little less sure, I might be more prone to doing it.
Right.
And we've still had success fishing over water that we've done a bank flash on. Although
that's why we do it.
Oh, lots of times, yeah.
And you sort of are always balancing that. Like, is it better to get closer to the bank with my cast because now I know how far away the bank is, or did I just spook the fish that I'm trying to cast to? And so you can never shine it for too little time, as quickly as you possibly can.
Yeah.
That's the amazing thing, is how quickly your brain can paint a mental picture. You just need it's like, you know how you see those words, like the human brain doesn't need to see all the in-between letters. You just need to see the first and the last, and all the other ones can be jumbled up. It's just like the same thing. You just need to see it just for an instant. And your brain kind of paints that picture and says, I know what we're looking for is depth primarily. Depth of field is what we're looking for. We don't want to know how far to cast. Like, how far is the bank? Is what I'm seeing in the shadows accurate with where I think the bank is? Yeah. And it only takes an instant. For your brain to paint a picture of that.
And I don't feel like it makes that much difference to the trout. Does it help? No. Does it turn some fish off? Yes, I'm sure it does. Would I rather just keep everything dark? Well, sure. But if I'm lost out there, basically, I'll bank flash.
Yeah, if it's like Trevor said, if it's unfamiliar water, but also if it's just a slow night, like, what are you going to hurt? You gonna keep it slow, like go for it. Try to get more accurate.
And on a lot of those slow nights, getting inches from the structure instead of a foot away from the structure, whether that's bank or a rock or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. And so then all of a sudden you bank flash and you catch a fish. You go, oh, no wonder, because I got a better, more accurate cast right where it needed to be instead of 3 feet away from where it needed to be.
Right. It's not that the light turned them on. It's that you got more accurate.
Certainly not.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think any of us believe that any light on a trout is going to turn them on. Yeah. Hey, let's move into glow-in-the-dark stuff. I think I told the story before how our buddy Sloop gifted me with a glow-in-the-dark fly line that he found on a trip out west. Slooper! Just in a random clearance bin for like $10, he said. And that was, I'm going to say, 10 or 15 years ago. And until then, I'd been trying to make something that would give me a reference point in the dark. I'd been night fishing for years, and I did it like you were supposed to do. And I'd been buying glow-in-the-dark yarn, glow-in-the-dark tubing, like silicone tubing in really small diameters, indicators, of course, and different glow-in-the-dark foam in different placements on my leader. I was painting different lines, like monofilament, and then I even painted a fly line with glow-in-the-dark paint that you could buy at the hardware store. But nothing worked well at all. And I'd read the stories and the recommendations. Again, I was doing it how you're supposed to do it, about fishing in total darkness, about never turning any light on, about not even taking a flashlight with you, let alone turning it on. And certainly no one talked or wrote about glow-in-the-dark lines or bobbers of any kind that I was aware of. But I was curious because I was kind of lost out there. And I was catching fish, but I knew that if I could have just a small reference, something that would guide my accuracy, like my drift speed and my strike detection, that I could do a whole lot better. Because again, I was kind of lost. And that line that Sloop gave me just changed everything. And I finally had what I needed. I'll always remember the first night I used it, it was just like a miracle to me. I think it works. And it did. Whatever. I caught a few extra fish that night, but just the confidence that it gave me is something that I was just looking for so long.
Yeah.
And it just changed the night game for me. Have you guys ever fished without a glow line?
Yeah, I remember the first time I tried to do it. The first handful of times Loon makes a glow-in-the-dark putty.
Okay, right. Yes, I have that over there on the shelf. Yes.
Oh boy, it does not work. And that's nothing against Loon. It's just like, it's just the nature of what we're trying to do. You're trying
not
to take
big enough.
Yeah, exactly. And trying to use that with a standard rig is so much more difficult.
Yeah.
Because you're in addition to, because it has to go on your leader. Like, it doesn't make any sense to build up more bulk on the end of your fly line with that stuff,
with the putty.
It really gets bulky. Yeah, exactly.
I know.
And so it has to go on your leader, and once it gets the little bit of glow that it can keep, once it's subsurface, doesn't do anything. Right. And so that was brutal. And I think, realistically, that after doing it for so many nights now, I've gone really long bouts throughout the night without actually charging, and it hasn't necessarily hurt the fishing. And I think that now perhaps there are some nights, depending on the amount of light that's out there, that you could that I could go without. But it is extremely helpful to have that little bit of glow, to know I know that my flies are in this line 8 feet beyond, 9 feet beyond, 10 feet beyond this lighted spot, this lit spot.
Yeah. That's well said.
I feel like even the moment my line hits the water and I see the current's effect on that line, I already know a lot about that particular water that I'm in, and if I'm where I want to be, and if I've found success in certain water types at night, I may very quickly be able to target that water just based on how the effect of the current is making my line move, which again is just this extension of your senses to be able to pull so much information from that glow line as it hits the water, because you can tell so much about it.
Yeah.
I also I have become very tied to the specific length of leader that I use at night, because I know its length from the end of my glow tip. And so even a foot of difference I've found makes a huge difference to me in terms of my ability to accurately hit targets, because I'm so tied into this, leader.
Consistency, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you don't have to think about during the day, because you can see exactly that little plot where your nymphs or whatever you're casting land. But then you try it at night, and all of a sudden, wait, I have no idea where this is landing, and that I was about to say that the accuracy means more at night, but it doesn't. It's just a lot harder to achieve at night. And so having any reference that you can to where your fly is and where it's landing is critical.
Yeah,
it is
for sure.
I fish a glow line too. I fish the SA. I know Rio makes one.
I
usually charge like the first foot or two. I don't like to charge a large section of line. Just
good point.
One, for convenience, and then two, I feel like it's just one less thing of light I have to put disturbance over the fish for.
Good call.
And kind of like you were saying too, Josh, the more I fish at night, the less I rely or depend on that fly line. Because I get more comfortable with my imagination and my mental image and just my awareness of what's going on without the light.
Yeah, and and just because it's not, a fly line is not glowing bright, doesn't mean that it's not, that you don't have a reference because you charged it a half hour ago. Like, I mean, I've gone a long time without charging it, and it holds these lines that we're talking about, the Scientific Anglers one, the Rio one. They hold light enough for your eyes to see for a very long time without charging. Yeah.
And they're white in the daylight. I mean, they're white too. Yeah. So if you have any kind of that moonlight, especially, and even starlight perhaps, you're still going to see a faint white fly line out there.
For sure.
Under some conditions. These are usually kind of powerful weight forward lines. Again, I like what Austin said. I'm the same. I'll charge like between 2 and 8 feet, depending on the night.
Yeah, and the value in charging a little bit more is to see the direction that your line is headed.
Right on. It depends on the tactic.
If you just charge a couple inches, then it's like, that doesn't give me a great idea on which direction my fly is in that line. If you charge a little bit more, then you see the orientation of the line, and you've got a pretty good idea of exactly where your fly is if you can't see where it's at.
Well, like Trevor was saying, I mean, these glow-in-the-dark fly lines, they tell you everything about the drift. I mean, almost everything, like the speed that your fly line is going, and then that attached leader, which I'm the same as you. Mine's 7.5, 8 feet. And so I know that the speed, I know the angle that it's going. I see the curve in the fly line, so I know what curve is going into my leader, and I know where my fly is then. And I know what kind of tension I have to it. I can tell if I don't really have that tension, maybe sometimes on purpose. And then there's strike detection there too. It just tells you everything that you need to know. There's still plenty of questions, but boy, it helps.
It also helps with like the method of retrieval, with knowing exactly what you're doing. Like if you're stripping, then you can see that kind of popping off the water, and you can choose your distance based on that, like how much to strip. For sure, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this in later episodes, but that lift and wiggle that we've mentioned in the past.
Oh yeah.
But man, I rely so much on seeing the fly line, because the fly line usually for that retrieve sits about 3 feet off the water for me, the tip of the fly line.
Nice.
And I rely on like a certain width of vibration for my favorite kind of version of that retrieve. And that's what gives me that tactile feedback that I'm getting the retrieve that I want without being able to see the wake that the fly is making.
Do you guys ever think they spook the fish?
That's the first question, right? I remember right away, I was like, this is just going to spook fish. But then instead of catching fewer fish, you catch more fish.
I know. That's how I felt too.
I mean,
the pros
it's like-
outweigh the cons. For
exactly. It's just like the bank flash, like we were saying.
Right.
Is it going to spook some fish? Yeah, probably.
Sure.
But are you going to fish better? Oh, definitely.
Right.
Right?
So it's worth it.
Right. There's a trade-off. And man, I don't know about you guys, but it just seems like the fish don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, we got
Agreed.
a 7-8 foot, whatever, however long you want it to be. Mine's 7 or 8 feet of a leader, and they don't seem to care about that glowing line that's 8 feet away.
Kind of makes me think about, like, we talk about if trout are leader shy or not.
Right.
Or they
Right.
poor drift shy. So is it the same thing at night, where are they not necessarily glow in the dark line shy, or they're just shy to whatever weird offering you might be giving them?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right. Why is that
Totally.
Pendragon doing that? I'm not eating it.
Yeah, right.
So you guys have talked about you carry a UV light. You think that matters for charging the glow in the dark line?
I certainly think it's fast.
It's fast and it's high to, and the way that I do it and keeping it in my palm face
Right.
down is that it doesn't change my vision. So I just I point the light straight down into my palm, and I pull I pull that section of line straight through my hand. So the light is always faced away from me. It's into my palm. It's not on the water. And then so it's fast and efficient. And I have that little tying UV light on a retractor on my chest rig tucked into a outside pocket. So it's super convenient to just pull it out, use it.
You also
and
don't have
pop
to
back
coil
in.
it up at all, like
Right.
and maybe that's the case with a high-powered flashlight as well. But with a UV light, it's got all the I don't know a lot about this, but the UV light has all the properties it needs to charge it pretty much instantly.
You guys think it charges faster and lasts longer?
Well, I think it charges faster. I don't know if it lasts longer than like I think that a 1 second charge, because I do the same thing that Trevor does. I hold the flashlight against my hand, against my palm, and I pull. What I do is I make a cup with my hand, and the light sits in that cup, so no light can really escape.
Yeah.
And I pull a strand of I pull the line through one of my fingers, and it just goes right against the light as it passes through. And all it takes is, it's not even a second, like I'm not coiling the line up and then missing chunks of the line because
So you're charging like 1 inch at a time?
No, we're charging like 6 feet at a time.
No. I mean, when it's under the light, though, like how long do you have to
Yeah,
sit
exactly.
that thing
So
under the light?
whatever the width of the light is what you're
I
charging
pull
at
it.
a time.
I
So
pull
yes,
it at about a 6 inches a second, maybe.
Okay, I guess that, yeah. Okay, that answers
it's
it.
pretty.
Yeah.
It's pretty quick, and it lasts about 10 casts before it starts to dim.
At all. Yeah.
And that doesn't even matter, because a dim light is just as good as a bright light to us.
Sometimes better.
As long as you can see the tip and the direction, that's fine.
Right on.
And so you just like it. It goes right through between my pinky and my ring finger, and the light sits right there in that pocket, and you just pull it through at a relatively fast pace. It's lit up for about 4, 5, 6 feet, and then you're back at it.
Right on.
And it takes no thought or time.
UV light, the reason that it really works as well as it does is just that UV light has a really short wavelength, and so it penetrates much more easily, which is part of what makes the UV light dangerous. But it penetrates the phosphor, which is the glow-in-the-dark material, more deeply, and that results in more excitation of the phosphor atoms and that emit the photons that we then see in the visible spectrum.
Oh, shit, I was just about to say that. He
So
took words right out of my mouth.
That's why a short charge results in what seems like it lasts longer, because that activation is occurring deeper within that material to the full depth of that material, rather than an external kind of.
Did you just Google that, or did you just pull that out of your head?
Just classic phosphor atoms.
I will say I've gone back and forth from the UV to just keeping the regular handheld flashlight and using that. Right now I'm back to the handheld, because bringing the UV for me, then now I have 2 handheld flashlights with me, and I could do like you are saying, Trevor, and rig it differently. All I'm saying is to anybody out there, you don't have to bring a UV light out. I totally agree though that it charges it faster. I don't know that it lasts longer. In my experience, but maybe by a slight margin, 10% or something like that. But I certainly admit that it charges deeper, let's say, and so much faster. whatever.
It looks like a lightsaber when you're pulling it out. It's because
it's pretty wild.
It charges
It's
so
pretty neat.
fast.
Everybody
Yeah.
should go on YouTube and watch the night fishing episode with me and Josh, and just
Right.
we tried to capture it because it is so cool looking in real life, and it's hard to do with the limitations of cameras at nighttime, but
It's like
still
you're
looks pretty cool.
extruding glow in the dark line.
Right, exactly.
It's neat. All right, so we use the glow in the dark fly lines almost every night, right? Probably every night. We don't always have them super illuminated though, right?
Right.
Now, glow in the dark sighter. Briefly explain that. Once I started using a glow in the dark fly line, I was like, well, I told you guys that I started around that time too, saying, man, I need to, on these slow nights, I need to be able to nymph. And there are a few different ways to do it, but we all like tight line nymphing tactics. And what I decided to do is take about 20 inches of the running line portion, the back line, the back part where it attaches to your backing, right? I took the running line portion of the glow in the dark fly line, which glows, 20 inches of it, cut it off, put a nail knot on each side, put some tippet rings in there, and there, I have a night sighter. And it's heavier than a regular sighter. Of course it is. You know, it's 0.022 inches instead of, I don't know, 1x or 0x or something like that. However, the things that I'm doing when I'm nymphing at night, that doesn't really matter, and I work with it. So it's great for tight line tactics, and that could be nymphs or streamers. Maybe I just want to do tight line stuff with my streamers, and it doesn't mean I'm always trying to get dead drifts. It's just simply it's a great tool. This night sighter is a great tool for putting in a tight line rig, whether that's this mono rig that we talk about so much, or you could call it a Euro nymphing rig. Put that in the middle, right where you would put your sighter, see what happens. Do your daytime tactics and use it that way. And sometimes I'll even add it then to the end of a regular fly line. I've had a couple friends go out with me who did not have any night fishing experience. And again, I remember feeling like, man, I just need a reference point. I need something to know what I'm doing out there. And they didn't want to nymph at night, and I didn't want them to nymph at night. I wanted them to swing wet flies or mouse or do mouse emerger stuff like we'll talk about here in future podcasts. So I didn't want them throwing a tight line stuff at night. That's almost too complicated to get into the night game with. But I took the night sighter and I attached it basically to the end of their regular fly line. So at the end of their fly line, they had a 20-inch piece of now another kind of fly line that glows. And we kept that illuminated for most of the night. And then we put a regular, 7-8 foot leader on the end of that and threw mouse patterns or the bad mother that we'll talk, or wet flies, whatever. And that is a really invaluable tool that like opens up what you can do out there because it allows you to get drifts without tension too. That's the thing. Like at night, most of the tactics that we do at night are tension based. We're swinging flies, we're stripping because there, even with the glow in the dark fly line, we still find that having that tension, well, then it gives you the feel, that tangible feel to the presentation.
Totally.
And that's what most night tactics are based on. And again, we're going to get into all this, but having that night sighter, especially when it's attached to some kind of tight line system, in our case, usually this standard mono rig, really allows you then to get tensionless presentations or go with less tension. You can basically get dead drifts.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to be in touch, pure contact, so you can feel everything that's going on. You can just read the sighter just like you would in the daytime. It's a pretty amazing tool. For me, it really opened things up. And I just remember almost giggling out there. I was like, this is awesome. I can do what I do in the daytime now.
So cool.
Just do it a little different. We're going to have a full podcast on night nymphing. We'll get into more of that.
Cool.
So real quick, because we're talking about glow-in-the-dark stuff, I mean, we use glow-in-the-dark, they make thingamabobbers. I don't think Airlock makes glow-in-the-dark, but I have glow-in-the-dark thingamabobbers that are remarkably bright for a long period of time. It's like this little glowing globe that is just out there.
That's funny. I've had the exact opposite. I was actually going to mention it. The thingamabobbers that I have, maybe it's a batch thing, but the thingamabobbers that I have are underwhelming.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I think I feel the same as you, Josh. I feel like mine aren't that good.
Where'd you buy your thingamabobbers from?
Maybe.
What'd you dip them in?
I'm not kidding you.
A hardware store paint?
Maybe yours are the knockoffs.
And I see them well.
Man, mine.
They last a long time.
I feel like the line holds a way better charge than my thingamabobbers.
Oh, I don't.
Mine disappear.
Well, just as well, I would say. I
They're
feel
pretty
like
big too. Like
they're
they're the 1/2-inch ones, you know.
I've got little ones also.
I have the little ones too. Yeah. I was using those a lot before I got the glow in the dark fly line. And I was trying to, I was even trying to do kind of almost tight line stuff with glow in the dark yarn and the small glow in the dark bobber. I usually charge them with the flashlight. Maybe it's a UV thing. Maybe they don't take the UV light all that well.
My favorite use for the glow in the dark indicator is daytime fishing because it looks.
Oh yeah,
it looks the most natural. Looks like a bubble. Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I use those.
That's true.
Those are
That's
almost
funny.
exclusively what I use.
Not to derail the intention, but
No, the white and the glow in the dark are primarily what I own.
same. And
Yes.
yellow, trout eat yellow bobbers better.
and Bill fishes the pink bobbers.
Yeah, of course it's Bill.
Yeah.
It's
Notice he's not here because he's afraid of the dark.
It's true.
Just getting that out there.
Please leave that in there.
No, but we'll talk more about glow in the dark stuff like that for nymphing in the nymphing podcast. Last thing on glow in the dark stuff, guys. What about glow in the dark flies? Have you fished them underneath or on top?
Nope.
I have a chunk of foam that's glow in the dark that I'll tie like little tags in as not necessarily as flotation devices for the fly. So if I'm tying like a bad mother, which I don't usually tie foam into a pendragon, which is a slightly larger fly, but if I'm fishing a bad mother, I generally tie a foam tab into there, and occasionally I'll put a second tab because normally I just like a big black foam tab because I don't want if I shine a light on it, I don't want that whole thing to glow because my assumption is that it's going to hurt.
They might shy away from it.
Exactly. But I will put a small second tab that is about half the size of the larger tab. Like it's still going to float the front half of the fly, but I can see
This is a reference. I've done that. I've put glowing foam on plenty of flies. I don't do it much anymore because with that glow in the dark fly line and the 7-8 foot leader, I know where my fly is. So I feel like
you can see the wake. Yeah. If you're on top, you can certainly see the wake, like the wake
in the right light on the right night. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've only used them on like say large drake patterns at night, but it's also foam and it's glow foam to the point where it's only the top of the fly. So it's not like the fish is looking straight up and seeing a glowing object. It may see some residual light. I really doubt it, but it's more for visual aid than like trying to turn a fish on if that was an intention either.
My problem with that has been that you need to have a big enough piece of glow in the dark whatever to be able to really see it, and you need a dark enough night for that to show up, and you do need to keep charging it, if it's a real small piece on the top of a drake.
Yeah, and there's also glow in the dark macrame yarn that you can use for posts and wings, so I sometimes can combine those and it can get really bright.
Just this week I got a text from a buddy of mine who sent it's squirmy, wormy material, but it's
glow in the dark.
But it's UV, and you can glow. It's glow in the dark, and so you can charge it up. And he was like, "Do you think this would work for nymphing at night?" I'm like, "Gosh, who knows? Maybe if you charge it and then let it sit for a few minutes and have like a really subtle glow, potentially. I wouldn't want it to be like a harsh glow. I'd want to charge it and then wait a while.
So I used that glow in the dark squirmy stuff quite a bit. I bet I logged 10, 15, 20 hours on that stuff. And I couldn't catch fish on it. Maybe. I don't remember ever catching a fish on it. I've also used glow in the dark paint on like jig heads and stuff like that. And I've tried keeping them real bright. And I've tried letting them get dim like you're saying, Josh. Very little success. Now that is 20, 30, 40, 50 hours of that kind of testing is not much. From one guy and 1 or 2 waters. It's not enough. It's not enough to really say something. I told you guys I just got back from a saltwater trip. Our family vacations become saltwater fishing trips, and I fished at night and actually had a glow in the dark bucktail that I didn't catch fish on, but I put a very dark, it's a wine colored bucktail on. Aiden was with me, my youngest son there, and we got the biggest fluke that I've caught in all the years I've been fishing there.
Wow.
So little night fishing in the surf.
Love it.
That's cool.
Super cool. But it didn't take the glow in the dark one.
Interesting.
I think there's so little chance that they ever see something actually glowing in the water that it is just unnatural to them to actually eat something that's on the fly.
in saltwater, there's stuff that glows, right? Right, Trevor?
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
science
for
man.
sure. But most of the bioluminescent stuff is like deep ocean stuff.
I don't know about trout rivers.
Yeah, but not much in the
No,
shallows, right?
no.
Even there, it's not much in the shallows.
Right.
That's all deep water stuff.
Yep.
All right, so anything else, guys, before we get out of here?
Take it and run.
Let's get out of here.
All right, there it is. Lights, night fishing. It always comes down to what we can see and what we can't. Of course, we use our other senses. And yes, those senses are heightened, and we often rely on feel more than our limited sight in the relative darkness. But it is not pitch black out there, especially when we attain and then preserve good night vision. So we navigate the evening from shadows and outlines, pitching unseen flies beyond the visible perimeter and tracking those flies through the feel of a line in our hand, by sensing the load on our rod tip, and by sometimes following something that glows in the dark. Light affects the fishing, but it also affects the fish. And while trout seem to prefer darker nights, they might also feed better with a few stars in the sky for a nightlight. All right, next week we begin an exploration of tactics for the night game, starting with drifting versus swinging flies, because this is the fundamental decision to make in presentation, regardless of the flies we choose. So, see you then. Dr. Trevor Smith, will you read us out?
Appreciate the introduction.
Uh-huh.
Remember, the Troutbitten Project is a free resource for all anglers. The Troutbitten website hosts over 1,000 articles with endless stories, commentaries, tactics, tips, and more. Find what you like through the top menu and through the search page. Navigate by way of the categories and tags, too. Be sure to find the Troutbitten YouTube channel, currently featuring the Troutbitten Tips series, in collaboration with Wilds Media. These are short, useful, and unique tips for your fly fishing life. Thank you for listening to the Troutbitten Podcast. Please give the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and leave us a comment, because that really helps. Until next time, friends, fish hard, enjoy the day, and find your life on the water.
He was on a mission there. He was like, let's get this done.
There's no pause. There's life on the water. Man, it's dark. Wow.
It can get really bright.
Or we're dealing with the trout's emotions versus their biology.
Big fish come with the humidity.
I did 100 push-ups today.
You probably did them on your knees.
Them trouts are spooked.
Thank goodness.
Little pouch of carrots on your vest.
Must recharge.
Gosh dang it.
Most of the stuff everybody reads about everybody. Something wrong, Trevor?
No, sorry. I was just mimicking your finger.
Oh, sorry. Making
Feel
fun
like
of
you're
me.
pointing at
Just
me.
trying to get us through.